I had this core idea of basically in survival stories or like post-apocalyptic stories, there's a lot of focus on like the survival elements and the danger. I feel like I haven't seen something more focused on relationships, or at least like relationships like this. Like this is a unique view of like what would a big gay slut do in the post-apocalypse. So that was kind of the main thing. There are other sort of sim elements where you'd have to do more to manage your resources and stuff than what was here now. I cut those back to focus on the story because for me, the point is the writing. That's always where I'm coming from. I started this as a writer, and all of my other games are narrative focused as well. So I pared back to really focus on the story I was trying to tell. As for the full length of the game, I think there are about a dozen different partners um, whom you can have sex with, and there are a couple of repeats as well. I don't know if I want to spoil who, but some of the characters you've seen today may recur as well, depending on the routes you go through. Yeah, Sneck is mentioning the variety of guys. That was a big focus for me as well. Was getting some diversity in, both like in terms of skin tone and body type, and personality. Like I really wanted to hit all of those vectors. Um, I have also noticed that a lot of games focus on like one niche. Like they'll say, okay, we want to focus on players who are really into twinks, for example, and then all the love interests are twinks, and they kind of look the same except for their different hair colors. And that can be fun, especially if the writing carries it, if they have different personalities. But for me, I like variety. I wanted a variety of guys, so that was something that I really pushed for. So here we saw two kind of twinkier guys, and then a bear, and we have some more variety stuff in between those as well as you go further through the game. Yeah, so Murph brings up the choices and the replayability. I feel like my experience with visual novels, I really enjoy exploring different choices. Even if I'm playing through the same section again, I like seeing all the different permutations. So I made sure to put a lot of detail in there. There are like 3 or 4 different kind of ways you can get to having sex with Lucas, even besides what I showed here. Trading the comic is the easiest and obvious one, but if you decide not to for some reason, if you want to hang on to the comic, there's still a way to get in Lucas's pants. And then, of course, the larger route differences, like we saw at the end there, where you can go towards the city or away, and those give you completely different experiences. And yeah, I think the protagonist is something I kind of found as I wrote him. I mean, I had the core idea, like in order to facilitate the game as it is, he needs to be a big gay slut and a versatile big gay slut at that. We didn't see it here, but he can top. But there are, yeah, aspects of his personality and stuff that I sort of found as I was trying to solve writing issues that were coming up. He does a lot of wandering, and that's sort of the core of the game, but I wanted him to have some motivation as well. So that bit about wanting to see the ocean, that comes up and becomes more important depending on which route you go through. And we get into a bit of his backstory and stuff as well as to like why that's something that interests him. And then stuff as well about like emotional intimacy and like why he always leaves. That's something I want to explore more as the game goes on. When I started with the premise, like that's kind of a given. Like he fucks and goes. That's just the premise. But getting deeper into the character and feeling like asking why he is that way was something that sort of came about as I went on. So I do have a Patreon, but it's not. If you want to follow me there, that would be cool and fine. You can do so for free or drop some cash. I don't really have any bonus incentives for that right now or anything. It's mostly just a repository of my other writing, which you can check out if you'd like. That would be cool. I also have other games on itch.io. A lot of them are free. A couple of them are paid or have paid bonuses. So if you just want to support me, you can check those out. There's also a short story prequel to Desert of Ash called Deliver Us from Flame. I have that up for, I think, like $2. So that's will give you a little bit of insight into the world of Desert of Ash, how it came to be the way it is. And there is some spiciness there too for you. Koro's asking about my favorite dialogue to write. And yes, you're correct. I do have some favorite dialogue, but we have not seen it. How much do I want to say about the future of the game? So there is a duo of characters that you spend a lot of time with together, all three of you, and their dynamic is really fun. Most of the game is the protagonist with like one other guy or by himself. So it's really refreshing to write that section where it's not just the protagonist, one other person, but like a third party as well, and all three of them can bounce off of each other. Plus, like those two, like they know each other, they're friends, but they have a almost adversarial dynamic. And I got to write like fun quips, so yeah, look forward to that part. Kind of. So I live in Alberta, Canada, which is a prairie province. I find a lot of my writing involves like flatlands. Maybe it's growing up here, but I have a hard time envisioning or imagining more varied geography. In my head, everything's flat. So I have a couple other like stories and things that I've written and published or not published that take place either in a desert or like a prairie. That's kind of my default in my mind is those flatlands where you can see for miles and miles and miles. As for the specific details of this setting, yeah, there have been massive wildfires every summer for I don't know the past 6-7 years here, where it was never the case when I was growing up. I never had a smoky summer as a kid, and all of a sudden every summer is really smoky. So to me, sort of looking forward, not looking forward to, but looking into the future of that, like that could be what my province looks like in the future to some degree. I'm sure, or I hope that what I've written is a vast exaggeration, but it definitely doesn't feel fully out of the realm of possibility, I'll say. Yes. I don't think there's anything in the game that I would consider to be overly kinky. I try to instill some variety, but I don't think there's anything. I mean, we've already seen the rimming scene. Probably there isn't anything beyond that where people might get squicked out, I would say. um, I really had to try hard to find a way to put rimming into the game. I really, really wanted a rimming scene for reasons that I won't go further into. But given the setting and the way things work, I thought it might be a bit. People might have questions about hygiene if it happened a lot. So I fully crafted Haru's scenario just to have an excuse to get some ass eating in there. As I said, he mostly does like visual design work. So like the menus and stuff were his wheelhouse, and those went very quickly, super easy. The art, I've seen his drawings evolve a lot from when I started to now, and that's been a unique pleasure. It's like seeing the behind the scenes of everything and his skill improve. Yeah, I'm really glad that that aspect is enjoyable as well. Yeah, thanks, Caro. When we were talking about what we wanted for the UI, we really wanted something that is not only like, excuse me, easily readable, but also like ties into the themes and gets across the vibe of the story well. No one's asked about the music so far, but I want to talk about it a little bit. I sourced it all from an artist called Abstraction. He has a huge, huge library. Since it's just the two of us, we don't have like an in-house musician, so I needed to source it from somewhere. And I didn't want it all to sound so like hodgepodge, like if I was getting it from different sources. So I found somebody, Abstraction, with a huge, huge library that I could pull from, so it would all sound unified. But the reason I found him is because he has this song that you're hearing now, which is called One Last Bonfire Before the End of the World, or something like that. And it just sounded perfect. Like, oh, a fire before the end. That's exactly what the scenario is here. And as soon as I heard that, I knew I wanted it in the title screen. Like, that's like the theme of the music, and you can hear the fire crackling. That's part of the song as well. So from there, I was like, I need to use this song at least. But let me go through his library and see if there's anything else I can use. And luckily, there was. His work is really great. And he is heterosexual, but has no qualms about having his songs be the backing to gay porn. So that is a bonus. Yes, mostly. I wrote the prototype version, which is basically the length of the demo that you saw today, which was just text. That all got rewritten, but like that much of the story was there to start. And then I always wanted to make a full version of this, but I knew I would need to collaborate with somebody. And I didn't want to start it fully until I had that secured. And then I met Geo through a friend, and he was like, "Your post-apocalyptic gay sex simulator, that's so great. I would love to see a full version." I was like, "Well, I would also like to see a full version," and the rest is history. So from that point, as soon as we started talking about it, I started writing the full script. And I believe at that point he started like toying with logo type and some of the UI stuff first, and playing with some character designs. It took a while to design all the characters, just get their designs down before doing any final drawings. By the time that had finished, the first draft of the script was done as well. So for the most part, the script came first, and then any of the like final art that's actually in the game that happened after the script was finished. Like I said, he's a visual designer in his day job, so he's a much busier person than I am. This is pretty much what I do. This and some other like freelance game dev stuff. So I have a lot more time to work on this than he does. So the main bottleneck is the art for sure. So most of the writing and a lot of the programming stuff happens before the art gets put in. Right, so this is all in ren'py. For the most part, is pretty easy. If you're going to make a visual novel, definitely recommend starting with ren'py and then seeing if there are specific things that you want to do that maybe ren'py can't do. For me, the only difficult part was the trading system. And it was only difficult for me because I'm not a programmer by trade. I had to figure all that out. But otherwise, everything was super, super easy in ren'py. Yeah, ren'py. The other thing about ren'py is that it's very popular and it's been around for a while. So there are lots of people who are willing and able to help you out with anything that you might struggle with. Um, my tendency is not to ask for help, which has made things take longer than they probably needed to. But I also have fun figuring out for myself, so it's not so bad. There's one funny one. You can find it on the game's Twitter account. I posted about it there at one point. But before I had the items in, I was working with placeholders while I was getting the inventory going. And most of the bugs and stuff you're going to find in ren'py are like assets being different sizes, or you're just going to get like a crash. But what happened was, I changed the size of something, and then I went into the inventory, and all of a sudden, the screen was just one giant bag of Lay's chips. It was just a photo of a bag of Lay's chips that I was using as a placeholder, and that was a bit of a jump scare, honestly, but it was a pretty funny one too. Yeah, I felt like having a mechanical element to the survival was necessary to sort of get across the texture of the apocalypse. I think I mentioned before, I thought before we got into full development about some other mechanical aspects, but I pared a lot of that down. But the thing I really needed was to like make sure that you actually need to manage your supplies and your hunger so you don't starve to death. Um, One other thing that I was considering doing that was a bit more simmy, but that I ended up cutting was having condoms be a resource. And so you wouldn't be able to have sex if you hadn't found a condom. But I was like, that's putting a limit on the thing that people are going to be most excited about doing in this game. And also, I would rather have it be bareback anyways, so I cut that. And the other thing that I cut was a horniness meter, where if you were too horny, you couldn't make sound decisions. And if you weren't horny enough, you couldn't have sex. And I was like, again, that's putting a limit on the thing that people want to do. So I'm going to cut that as well, even though it would be really funny. Snick's asking about the horse. So when I was reading that section, I saw somebody mention the horse. People getting excited about the horse. It might have been you, Snick. Um, And I was like, oh, I don't focus enough on the horse, do I? The horse is there, and then we forget about the horse. So I am probably in the full version going to write a little bit more about the horse in that scene. Maybe we can get some horse petting if it's appropriate. We'll see what happens, but I feel like I need to mention the horse again before the protagonist leaves Abbott's place. So thank you for drawing attention to the horse for me, Snick. Yeah, I'm big into body hair, and I really wanted to make sure that we got some hairy rep. That was a particular focus of mine. We obviously have some hairless characters as well, like Haru, and then quite a spectrum in between. That was a vector that I wanted to make sure that we were hitting. Um, Yes, actually. Okay, so there's one more aspect that was kind of present in the prototype version that I ended up deciding to cut. And there's again born from the idea that this was like a simulator and was going to be accurate about like what it's like to try and engage in casual sex in sort of an unsafe situation. And that was going to be that sometimes, or there would be some characters who are actually homophobic and violent who you could have negative encounters with. And I was like, no, that's too much of a buzzkill, I guess. Um, I definitely honed in on like the some of the survival elements where like it feels things can feel bad sometimes. Like you're starving, you're alone. But I thought having like enacting homophobic violence against the player was maybe a step too far, and that was another thing that I decided to cut. Yeah, like a lot of stuff we're talking about, like that ended up not making the cut, is born from that core idea of like this as a simulator. But again, the thing I care about is the story. I care about the writing most, so I cut back a lot of that other stuff to just focus on the characters and their arcs and how they're changed by connecting with each other, that sort of thing. Um, how old am I? I guess about 10 years. I started, oh, no, it's going to be more like 12 or 13. Yeah, I started in university. Um, when I first moved out, and went to university, around then was when I started discovering like flash games and these really tiny indie games you can play in like 5-10 minutes. I was like, that was the first time that I felt like, oh, I could do this. Like as a kid, I was always drawn to the writing of video games, and a lot of my stories that I was writing in my free time were really video game inspired. Like I would write something about like a party of 7 warriors with different weapon types who were fighting a dragon. Like that's very clearly just me wanting to write for RPGs, right? But yeah, it wasn't until university and I started discovering indie games where I was like, oh, I could do this. That's a thing I could do. And that was when I started writing Undone, which is a text game that you can get on my itch.io page. Um, And from there, I started working on like some other smaller stuff as well. Stayed with pretty much just text for a while before I started to feel myself push at the bounds of what I could do with that and started exploring what I could do with visuals on my own. I made a game in Bitsy, which is like a really easy to use game engine for basically pixel art walking simulators, and I made my own pixel art for that. I made something in RPG Maker with just like the default assets for RPG Maker. And then I was like, this is as far as I can go on my own with art. I need to work with someone else to make something more visual.